Uyo, uko, kuno, apo, pano. Mama wanna get it, I know food I me so, I know food I tebe, I know kaya marigi. Kama kwa jote komo, wende jote komo kusasa. Kama kwa I know kaya marigi.
Right, 21 August 2022, and today I'm joined by my usual guest on Sundays, FORUS Party President Irene Manyara Mienziwa. So I don't know if I should say Dr. Amai, but I need something shorter. What can I use for short form?
Just Madam Manyara would do, whichever way you want to say it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right, today we've got a quick presentation from yourself. I'm going to ask a few questions at the end. We're looking at the economic situation in Zimbabwe. I dare say the economic crisis in Zimbabwe. So please take us through the FORUS Party economic blueprint from start to finish. Then I'll ask you questions afterwards.
I say. Yes, yeah. Thank you very much for everybody at home. I think who has managed to join us this evening. What we need to present to you as FORUS Party is the way forward, for Zimbabwe. We are looking at the Zimbabwean problem, where the concern is on the three main economic tools, that are not being fully utilized. Which is what we've looked at as FORUS Party to see how we can inject some sort of drive within that so that we can form a pathway to the stabilization program for Zimbabwe. As we know that, we do have a huge structural debt. And with that debt, I think we cannot turn a blind eye or operate as if that is not a problem that we have. We've got to look at the issues and see how best, we can come up with a transformational agenda, which is what FORUS is offering there. If you look at it, I think we are looking at the huge debt, that we have, and work alongside, precautionary measures, like I've said, that are, indicated, by the IMF, even the World Bank and all these other organizations, that work alongside, countries to see how best, we can move away from the current mess, that we have. If you look at it, I think with Zimbabwe, it's a problem that started a long time ago. I think from the time that we took over independence, I think we've got to have a great understanding, of that. The problem emanated, from there, but then we needed, proper economic, diplomatic, fora to see how we can use our economic leverages, which are mainly tourism, agriculture, minerals. So looking at those three things, I don't think the government, that took power really focused, on that. You have to look at it from a point of view that, it was a new government, coming into power, and perhaps, quite a lot of, overwhelming issues to actually consider, on the table. If we look at the trail of, the discussions, around, taking over independence, and so forth, looking at the Lancaster House Agreement, there was quite a lot of things involved in that. Hence, I think we could see that straight away within 5 years, I think there was ASAP. Everybody knows it is Economic Structural Adjustment Program. That did not perform, very well. Before you know it, we did find ourselves, printing money to see how we can stabilize, the economy. And that didn't work as well, because I think with so many issues, pertaining to that, I think we had the willing buyer, willing seller that did not come to fruition properly. And then you had the issue of the compensation, being given to war veterans and so forth. I think the allocation was quite high, and I think the numbers expected, started, mounting and mounting. Before you know it, we lost our way on trying to find the right proper proper pathway for the economy of Zimbabwe. So what for us here is doing is that we've looked at the history of Zimbabwe and see where we are now, to see, you know, how I think even within that history of time, we did have, I think, targeted, you know, sanctions at that particular time. So you can say a different way of doing things, because there were some other flexibility that was allowed within this sanctions itself. I think we had, you know, countries, you know, like the United States, you know, through the Biden Amendment Act, you know, being allowed, you know, to carry on trading for chrome with Zimbabwe. So that actually, you know, helped the economy in some sort of way. And I think we had farmers as well producing food, you know, for the war that was going on at that particular time you know, in other countries. And, you know, all agricultural producing countries, you know, had to find a way, you know, of feeding, you know, so many different, you know, things that were happening around that time. So we benefited in some sort of way at that particular time, even though we had the sanctions on. So those small flexibilities that I've just mentioned, you know, allowed the economy to be seemingly operating on a productive, you know, way, but that wasn't the case. So looking at that, we're looking at Zimbabwe right now as we speak. We have got the same scenario. We've got targeted sanctions, you know, not equally the same, because these ones are targeted sanctions. But then at this particular point in time, we are allowed, you know, to trade, you know, with whoever we want to trade. I'm sure we can see that. I think the highest, you know, trade relation that we had, I think last year, you know, was with Europe, I think amounting to about 65%. So, you know, that, you know, shows you that, you know, we can find ways of how we can pull our economy, you know, out of this hole that we're in, and find, you know, the right, you know, pathway. But the pathway that we have is, for us, is looking at, you know, the issues around, you know, stabilization, you know, programs, which is what I think the current government, you know, is lacking, looking at such issues, you know, whereby we've got an orthodox, you know, way of looking at how we can come out, you know, of this, you know, loophole. What you're looking at there is, you're looking at it, how we're going to do it, as for us, is putting everything in phases. Look at how we can combat something within the short term, the mid term, and the long term. And within these three categories, you know, that I've put in, you're looking at the phases, you know, that are within there as well. What we're looking at is, we're looking at, you know, putting things as phase one, whereby the short-term, you know, economic stabilization can be put in place, where we can say we can do this, you know, within a space of, you know, 3 to 4 years, you know, so as to speak, or it can be probably 2 years, you know, roughly. And then we can look at, you know, phase two, where we can put in institutional and structural reforms, you know, that are designed to create a solid, you know, platform, you know, to strengthen our growth. What we are looking at doing is, you know, ideally, you know, some of these reforms, you know, can be implemented or at least, you know, initiated, you know, within the phase one itself. And then you go on to the phase three, you know, where you're looking at the second generation of institutional and structural reforms, you know, that are necessary to ensure that growth is, you know, both sustainable and inclusive, and, you know, that Zimbabwe, you know, avoids, you know, short-lived, you know, growth spells, you know, that prove, you know, unsustainable, which is what we're seeing. For instance, I think what I said, you know, we're coming up now with, you know, rapid results initiatives, you know, that don't seem to work, that do not speak to the current problem that we have as an economy as we speak right now. We are looking at some things that are being put in place, you know, like the gold coin, you know, issue that has been a hot topic within Zimbabwe. Those are some of the rapid results initiatives that we do not want to see, because obviously we've got a false economy, and as well, you know, we've got a parallel market. So with that, you know, it's not indicative enough of how this can actually give a solid reserve, you know, for our economy, so that we can actually, you know, produce surmountable, you know, growth from that. You know, centering on the, you know, gold coins, I have to say that, you know, the launch of Zimbabwe's own gold coin, it went off, you know, very well with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Monetary, you know, Policy Committee, you know, reporting that about 1,500 coins were sold, you know, in the first week. Theoretically, you know, the introduction of the gold coin, you know, aims to slow down the Zimbabwean dollars movements and reduce the currency money supply, and can only do so as long as gold coins are preferred over US dollars. And what you did see is the RBZ now mopping up the Zimbabwean dollar from circulation. According to the reports by the RBZ, approximately 85%, which is about 1,275 gold coins were sold from the first batch with Zimbabwean dollars, and the remaining 15%, which is roughly about 225 gold coins with US dollars. This translates to what I calculating it's a little over 1 billion of Zimbabwean dollars that was returned to the Reserve Bank, plus approximately, if you put the calculation, 410,000 US dollars. So this is not something that works within Zimbabwe. It's though it can provide some sort of a lifeline, but it's not something that is sustainable, where we are looking, like I was saying, within our phase 3, the type of institutional reforms that we want to put in as for us party. What you've got there is a high hyperinflation and an exchange rate, volatility. And with that, you do have certain issues, whereby monetary authorities, have too much latitude, extending in many ways to quasi-physical activities. We want the RBZ, to move away from quasi-physical activities to see within the pathway program, like I've said, the FORUS pathway program would like to see the RBZ moving away from such type of, quasi activities. So with that, because with that, you've got a lack of trust, and then you've got too much, a lot of printing money, and then you've got low productivity, and other factors also contributing to the downfall of the Zimbabwean dollar. Simply, saying that there are no fundamentals, to back up the de-dollarization, and these cannot be addressed, by gold coins. If you look at it, according to the bankers, of Association of Zimbabwe themselves, the majority of sales, that went in, around the introduction of the right time. Sorry, around that time of the introduction of the gold coins. You did find that the majority of sales, were to mostly corporates, and the idea that they sold it, that even individuals can be part of the gold coin circulation currency, is not something that works properly, because obviously what you have, as long as you've got a parallel market system working alongside, we need to move away from the parallel market system, and as well, we need to move away incrementally, from the use of the US dollar. But that has to be done, with a proper stabilization program, like I've said, looking at the Zimbabwean problem and come up with phases, like I've given 3 phases there. Phase 1, whereby we've got short-term economic stabilization, and then phase 2, whereby we have got institutional and structural reforms, that are designed, like I've said, to give that solid, growth, which can be incorporated in the phase one itself. And then that phase 3, whereby the second generation of those institutional and structural reforms, are there to actually sustain the economy for a long time. Long-term, period. So if you look at that, these are the proposals, that we're going to put in place, whereby we're putting in a proper, orthodox stabilization program, so that we can help our economic growth with tangible figures, that are sustainable over a period of time. So with this, I'm talking about looking at the economy itself and how we can put in place those 3 economic tools, and then move away from the rigidness of some of the hierarchical nature or the red tape, that is being used by the current, government. It's usually for something to be passed on. I think what I've always said is that we need to move away from a lot of commercialization law and go on to customary law, because with customary law, it's quite flexible, and it allows, interchangeable contracts, and if you're looking at demand and supply for businesses without involvement of the government. So with that, you've got quite a lot of efficiency that you can put in there. When I look at that, we are looking at the SADC implementation reform that they talked about, the one whereby they're looking at implementation of the industrial strategy and a roadmap, which they mentioned, from 2015 going as far as, 2063. So that's what we're looking at to see, how we can work with that and implement, a proper orthodox stabilization program over a specific, period of time, whereby I think businesses, individuals, and organizations and international companies, that we work with, investors and so forth, can have a proper understanding of exactly what is happening in Zimbabwe, where the economy stands, and where we're going. And as well, I think operate in a transparent, manner to our investors, whether it be our indigenous investors, whether it be our international investors. They need to see a reputation that, goes with the government, with presenting a proper stabilization, so that, they will not face, some sort of, money flight from investors themselves, in not trusting the way the government, is put something in place. So with the SADC industrialization strategy, it envisions the region to progressively move from being factor-driven investment, and then later on to efficiency-driven. So with the ultimate, high growth trajectory, driven by knowledge, innovation, business sophistication. So these are the things that we're putting in place, that we're going to bring in within our policies, where we're looking at industrialization as a champion of economic and technological transformation. If you look at I think our snippets that we've been putting up on our Twitter spaces, we've been looking at how we're going to incorporate industrialization in there. We're going to incorporate globalization and then liberalization. So with the liberalization strategy, I'm looking at all these rigidities that are put in place within the industries. I think our industrial policy needs to be looked at, which is what we've done. We've looked at that and see, how we have to move away from mainly operating on, public. Using mainly public companies, but with, and less of, private, companies. What we need to do there is to mix those two so that they can work together, or say, create a synergy of some sort, so that you can have, public private partnerships, so that you've got the issue of transparency being looked into there. You've got the issue of efficiency. Like I was saying, you've got the issue of, this factor-driven type of investment being looked at properly, because you've got each and every side of the two entities, the public and the private, entity, having to question each other on the weaknesses that both of these two entities, have, and they're thereby incorporating efficiency within the policies that they've got to follow. And as well, we need to enhance, competitiveness, at firm and industry level, within the country, and at regional level as well. With that, I'm talking about the globalization tool that we are using there, whereby, if we're going to transform the region, from dependency, on export, of our primary products, to one driven by manufacturers and innovation. It is based, on, following the globalization policy as a way of introducing our country to all different countries, using all these three leverages that I've said: the tourism, the agriculture, as well as the mining industry. So if you were to go back to the liberalization tool, the rigidness is not just on the you can look at customs. These are one of the things that we said we're going to look at and see how we can relax certain tariffs, certain quotas within our tariff structure, and see how we can put that so that we can create a favorable environment for importing and exporting our goods within that. So as well, I'm looking at the other tool that I'm looking at is the digitalization tool. This is something that, within all these three entities that I've mentioned, digitalization is at the epicenter of all of these different facets. So with that, we really need to work on that. I'm sure we can see we're quite behind in the way that we're introducing innovation. Digitalization is the way to go. I think even with all these issues that we have surrounding electoral reforms and so forth, we need to look at the digitalization policy and see how we can drive that to a point, whereby each and every individual, small businesses, large conglomerates, can actually operate within this zone of everything being digitalized. So this is something that we're looking at. So with that, we've come up with things that we say, if we were to look at what is it that Zimbabwe can do, we can look at, like I've said, looking at the working with, IMF to see, if they can give us the precautionary measures, that they have, so that we can put in and see, look at our structural debt, which is roughly at 20 billion as we speak right now. That's a huge debt. We've got to be worried about that. So with us putting in this stabilization, programs, this is a way forward to see, how we can come up with chipping away that figure so that we can have a sustainable economy, so as to speak. So with that, I need to go to the way we are operating at this very point in time. What FORUS Party administration envisages is a technologically advanced and competitive and diversified manufacturing industry. We're looking at this come 2023, and we're in power. We're looking at this by 2025. We should have put this in place. The roadmap that we have, with that, we're looking at how we can maximize, solar farming or solar harvesting. And I think even more so, not looking at, probably rolling out, solar panels, all across the country, but look at other forms of, that are highly technologically advanced, like solar satellites. That's something that, that we can look at and put in place, working with investors that we have spoken to see if this can be put in place. As you can see that, everybody wants to go green. Everybody wants to use clean energy. And what is best way energy to use? Solar power that we have within Zimbabwe, pretty much, all the year, except I think for just 2 months a year or 3 months a year. So that, we can have, a direct return there. That I said, it can take us roughly, I think the payback period, between 7 to 10 years. I think roughly 7 years we can have our payback period. And working alongside, the IMF with our, sequence of the stabilization program, with all these things that I've put in place, the institutional reforms, the structural reforms that we're going to put in place within the three phases that I've mentioned there. So that's what FORUS is looking at. If we are to look at the issue around, tourism itself, we're looking at, how we're going to build, work on decentralization and devolution in building up our economy around, our tourist attraction areas. Look at what type of excursions that we have within these tourist attraction areas. If you look at Zimbabwe right now, we are a very tourist attractive country, but we're not fully maximizing production on that. So we're looking at how we can look at if it's Matopos, what is it that we're going to put in place in Matopos, and then build banks and all the necessary infrastructure that is required for that particular area to function, so that everybody does not rely on Harare, everybody does not rely on Bulawayo. So the same thing that we have, we do have small cities already. We've got small towns as well, Gweru, Chinois, the Karibas, and so forth. So if you look at that, and see how we can look at each and every area in Zimbabwe and see, okay, if it's a tourist-based infrastructure that we need to place, then we maximize, on that. Then we create employment around that so that people don't have to travel, so far. We maximize production. We put in the manufacturing industry within that particular area, depending on the the type of resources that that area has. If you're looking at Zhishavane, or if you're looking at Bindura, if you're looking at Kanyembe and such areas, now I'm going into mining itself. How are we going to maximize production, whereby as well we're looking at the type of infrastructure that we're going to put in place? With this type of infrastructure, we're looking at how we can marry the road structure, the railway structure, the air structure as well. So as well, looking as well, how we can put in place as well the road to sea map. What we need is that link as well from the road to sea, map, or the rail to sea, link, whereby we can look at all these different ports, that are near to us, whether it be the South African port, whether it be the Mozambican port, and so forth. So if you're looking at all of those things, so we've got a plan already that we've put in place, whereby we're now linking the road, the transport infrastructure, link it to ports, whereby I'm saying, it's the rail to sea port, and then we've got the rail to sea road, and then as well linking in, all these tourist attraction areas, all these mining areas, so that we can maximize, business, as such. So that is the roadmap, that we have, as for us. And as well, when you are looking at our manufacturing industry, this will facilitate and promote the development of sustainable, innovative, inclusive, and globally competitive industrial and commercial enterprises for improved consumer welfare and economic growth. What for us will do is the administration policy on the manufacturing sector, seeks to facilitate the sustainable growth of industry, development of new industries, and the transformation and diversification of the Zimbabwean industry. So if you look at that, like I've said there, we can maximize production on solar farming, whereby we look into solar satellites. This is something that we've been speaking to investors, which is something that they're very much interested in. If you're looking at our platforms, we're posting some of these discussions that we're having. We're looking at our tourism industry and see how we can actually bring tourism to the people, not people having to travel long periods or long distances, to where the tourist attraction area is. We can actually bring some tourism nearer to where the people are, bring in the animals, from where they are, and put them to nearer, mountains, that we have, and actually connect, some sort of, belt system that we have there as a tourist attraction, where people, these are some of the examples that we have that we need to put in place, that we've spoken to investors, that these are the things that we want to put, we need to bring in, whereby we've got a link. What we're linking is the mining sector, becomes a tourist attraction area. Then we're looking at our, our views, the mountains and so forth. It's a tourist attraction. Then we're actually using the nature itself, whether we've got sunset and sunlight. So if you now put in a belt, I'm just going to give an example of some of the things that we've put out there to our investors. If we put in some sort of, if you look at the example that I can give is the Table Mountain in South Africa, but they have not maximized, production there. But it's the same sort of style that we're incorporating, whereby the mountain to mountain link can actually link the north to south, east to west of Zimbabwe, of which, whereby you've got that belt that has been put in place, that are linking, whereby shall we have to bring in the animals to this specific, mountain, whereby now we can actually create a home for these animals, but then at the same time, it becomes a tourist attraction, rather than everybody having to drive to Kariba, all the time, everybody having to fly to Victoria Falls, everybody having to, so we are limiting ourselves in the way that we can actually bring tourism. In this type of tourism, I'm looking at, our local, tourist, people, the Zimbabweans themselves, they don't want to travel, perhaps, long distances, they've been to work Monday to Friday, they just want to pop in on a weekend, tourist attraction area. That's what we need to do. And look at all these rivers, that we have, and see, how we can actually, create, water sports, around, Lake Chivere there, which is quite near. It has not been fully utilized. These are some of the things that we've spoken to our investors, and we've put an outlay to see, how we can incorporate investment, in that sort of way. All those things have been left idle, but these are leverages, that we have as a country, and it's all linking our tourist attraction to agriculture, itself. So you can have agricultural tourism, you've got, mining tourism, then you've got the game reserve, tourism, then you've got the nature tourism and so forth. So we have looked at all these different facets within our policy to see, how we can link and combine all these things together so that we can actually give it out to investors to say, what, this is how we can have an anchoring on investment, led and innovation, led industrialization. So those are the things, that we are putting in place. So when you're looking at that, the thrust of our policy, will be two-pronged. That's what I've just said there, anchoring on investment-led and innovation-led. I've just explained, how we're linking in the investment and the innovation leading to industrialization. The specific, policy objectives, are to attain manufacturing sector growth of at least 5% per annum, according to our calculation, and as well contributing towards attainment of a gross domestic savings rate of at least 30% of GDP. So with that, you can see the different ways that we're looking at how we can combat our structural debt, and as well manufacturing value added growth of 16% per annum. Which is, I think, probably operating at, 7%, 7 to 10% as we speak, right now. So we can maximize that, to push it up to 16%. And as well, merchandise, export growth rate of 15% per annum to orient, the manufacturing sector towards exports and generate capital for a high savings, rate, increasing the manufacturing sector share of employment to 70%, by 2024. So if you look at all these different facets, that I've said, of how we can maximize, our growth, you can see that, it's easy for us to achieve the manufacturing sector share of employment to 70%. And you can see, this is creation of employment, whereby I think our employment percentage, I think is perhaps, sitting on roughly, between 25 and 35%. So we need to maximize that to 70%, by 2024. This is just a short space of time. This is just within a year, because if we empower by 2023, I'm promising this by 2024. We're looking at our stabilization program and talking to IMF and to see, how we can do a debt restructuralization, working alongside them and see, how we can put in all these different investment-led and innovation-led industrialization, type of implementation that we want to put in place. So our trade policy will be investment-led, like I've said, innovation-led. I'll keep on repeating that because those are the main things that, we are looking into to see, how we can emphasize, on growth, on export growth. And then as well, it will emanate, from these anchors, that I've given out, already, that are, following these key pillars, and this will shape, trade policy in Zimbabwe, manufacturing sector, under, the FORUS, government. What we need to look at is development and strengthening of our industrial value chains. This is something that we need to put in place. If we're looking at our agriculture, I think we are being very, very wasteful in the way we're operating. Nothing should be thrown away. Everything should be put to maximum use. We're looking at, okay, if you, for example, if you are to cows or cattle, the hooves have got to be put in place, the hides have got to be put in place. Obviously, we're going to sell meat. The insides have got to be put in place. All of these things, the horns have got to be put in place. So this is something that I'm saying, that, within that value chain, specific, we've got all these things put in place, whereby now, if you were to look at the type of investors that we're working with, or the type of an export, portal, that we have, we've got to create an industrial value chain that works and speaks to that specific investor, and incorporating all these different chains that are within the selling of cattle. Just an example. And agro-based, industrialization, whereby we're looking at, if we look at all the agricultural produce, that we have in Zimbabwe, we are throwing away, quite a lot of waste. But then we can actually push that, towards, I think, rubbish, collection. refuse collection, and then we can actually use that, for energy. It can be used, for manure and so forth. But as well, all of that waste, can be turned into energy. What we're looking at as well is a mineral beneficiation. There we can benefit, quite a lot, whereby I think if you look at all the minerals, that we have, within the country, we're looking at, how we can maximize that. One of the factors that I've said, linking that to tourism, using minerals as a way of tourism. And as well, we've got a way as FORUS Party, whereby we do not have to sell our minerals, but no, we can keep our minerals, but find and within our policies, we've got a way of actually making money without selling our minerals. So this is something that we have, whereby we don't have to lose the minerals that we have, but actually we can keep them. We don't have to sell our minerals, which is what the current government is doing. But we've got a way that we've found, speaking to investors, speaking to stockmen, speaking to all these different entities that are actually involved, or have got specific interests, within the minerals. So we can actually keep our minerals and actually find a way, of making money, out of that. So put FORUS into government, and we can show you some of the things that we have, that we've looked at, that we've spoken to investors to see, how we can actually maximize production without making a loss itself. And as well, export-led industrialization, looking at, what we have, our leverage, speaking to different export, portals that we have, and see, how we can actually have our industries leading, to that sort of, exportation. Commercialization of, intellectual property. This is something that we need to look at. I think we've got, talent, in Zimbabwe that we need to look after, as well. So we've got to look at, such things, whereby our youngsters, are producing, quite a lot of music and, and so forth. We've got, I think, people who are actually coming up with so many different, software, programs or software tools, that they have, that actually we need to. Just creating a patent is not enough. We've got to commercialize, our intellectual property, so that we can safeguard, the properties, of such different business, entities, as well. Heritage and natural advantage, based on industrialization. So I think we're looking at the history of Zimbabwe to see, how we can actually industrialize that. I think another factor that I did speak about is introducing our heritage to tourism, and see, how we can actually benefit in such a way. ICT-led industrialization, all is linking to our digitalization, policy. And as well, we are looking at emerging industries and startups, see how we can actually maximize production and create a favorable environment, for all those who are starting businesses, young people who are starting businesses, right now, to see, how we can have central banks, that can actually give out loans to Zimbabwe. If we are to incorporate all these things and put and inject all these ideas that FORUS has, all this policy-led, investment-led, innovation-led industrialization, you see that, we can create a favorable environment, for even young people to actually, start businesses. It's very difficult, for our youth to start businesses at the moment. We need to create things like, the youth investment, programs that can be put in place by us as a government, whereby we can actually help startups, for our youth, so that they can start, different businesses. As you know, I think, like I've said, we are there to maximize the middle class economy, because that's where the strength is of any country. Because there you've got your direct taxes, that are actually quite transparent, for you to actually have a good calculation to see, how much is you coming in and how much is your what's coming in and as compared to, what's going out. So with that, these are some of the things, that we have. And, we need as well, backward linkages, with SMEs. This is something that is lacking in Zimbabwe as we speak. This connection is seen, whereby I think the RBZ has got to link with this, small businesses. We don't have that, at this particular point in time. What you have is a massive amount of perhaps, confused, capitalization take, I think, from the current government itself. There isn't any, I think, direct division there for you to understand, what is it, in terms of, capitalization that they're standing for. Okay, you can look at, big businesses, but as well, I think not all money comes, and like I've said, the strength of a country comes, from the small businesses themselves. They're the ones, who actually, run the country. So we're looking at all these things, anchoring industries and industrial clusters, and producing in industrial parks and innovation hubs. Looking at all these different companies, that we have. How is it that we're going to link tourism to minerals, to agriculture? These are the hubs, that we're saying that, we can actually create industrial parks that are intertwined in a way that, it works alongside, together. It can actually propel, Zimbabwe's industrialization towards a transformed and internationally competitive economy driven by robust, free and fair domestic and international trade. And this policy is expected, to guide the implementation of the national vision. For us, administration commits to facilitating and supporting all sectors of our economy to contribute to and as well, sustain the economic growth trajectory. And as well, we will actually resolute to attract, both domestic and foreign investors to set up and produce goods and services in Zimbabwe, not only for the domestic market, but also for trade within the regional and, global interactions. Effective and coordinated implementation of the aforementioned, policies and strategies will ensure sustainable industrial growth, particularly in the manufacturing and services sectors, thereby, propelling Zimbabwe to its rightful destination of prosperity as an upper middle income economy through, like I've said, that liberalization, globalization, digitalization, and industrialization. These are the facets that FORUS Party will be using, that we're speaking to all different investors to see, how FORUS administration shall continue to engage in formal trade negotiations, looking at, bilateral, regional and multilateral levels with our trading partners to promote and advance, Zimbabwe's trade interests. What we're looking at there is we're looking at our export performance. Zimbabwe's export performance has largely remained subdued over the years, failing short of its potential to spur economic growth and development. This is noted that our total exports of goods stood at US 4.3 billion in 2020 against a target of US 7 billion. But then on the other hand, total imports increased by 26%, from US 4.96 billion in 2017 to US 6.76 billion in 2020, posing a challenge, on the balance of trade. The country's exports composition has been dominated by primary commodities, with raw minerals and raw tobacco contributing over 70% to the total export earnings. Exports of services averaged around, US, 500 million annually. So if you look at that, we're looking at how we can maximize, production of tobacco. We've got quite a lot of farms, that were tobacco producing farms that have been left, idle. I think with the issue, of expropriation, which is an issue that we have, as a country, that we need to remove. Like I said, the re-engagement, policy that we introduced as FORUS. We've already started engaging with all different, countries to try and see, how we can maximize production and improve on the bilateral, trilateral, relations that we have with all different, countries, so that we can maximize, such issues and eradicate, such issues as, land, lying idle. With that, we've looked as well, I think, centering on that, I think it's the land question, that comes into play as I speak into that. We do have a policy that we've created. I can see the current government, I mentioned about the symbiotic approach of, having the commercial farmers, working alongside the subsistence farmers. I've seen, I think the current government has taken on one of our policies there, because I myself, wanted to get a piece of land, and this is some of the things that they were explaining of which, that was after, FORUS Party had mentioned about looking at a symbiotic approach of having the coexistence of commercial farmer and the subsistence farmer so that they can have interlinks of, knowing, I think the other one works as a hub for the other, and there is interchangeability of skills there if you do it in such a way. So these are some of the things that we have, so that all this land that is lying idle, can be put to use. I think we're looking at issues of, I don't want to dwell on the issue of land because that's another different topic, for another day, but we've come up with policies that are put in place so that we can actually look at how entitlement, can be put in place. And I think this symbiotic approach is something I think that can actually work out better, whereby everybody owns a piece of land and everybody is into production. Going back, to the exports, Zimbabwe's export markets remain limited to a few traditional trading partners. This is something that we need to maximize. We're looking at all four corners of the earth to see, how we can trade with anybody, that is actually speaking to us, or our trade policy is actually working alongside the way that they want to do business in Zimbabwe. If you look at it, I think in 2020, South Africa remained the largest market for Zimbabwean products, absorbing roughly about 52% of total exports, followed by UAE at 18%, Mozambique at 15%, Zambia at 10%. But then on the other hand, major import source markets in 2018, where, in South Africa, roughly at about, we had about 39%, Singapore 22%, China 6%, UK 4%, and Japan 4%. There is a dire need, for international engagement to open up avenues for international trade, for beneficiation and value-added products, so that we can unlock foreign direct investment to Zimbabwe, so that we can actually increase our exports, to 15 billion by 2024 and reduce imports to under 4 billion, under the 4 billion mark. There is need for Zimbabwe to promote and facilitate trade, and this is through diversification of export products and export markets. So these are the things that we are putting in place. But then with that, what we have is looking at our trade. We're looking at how we can identify factors, that, have continued to affect our trade, and, reducing, our growth of exports, in Zimbabwe. What you've got there, the problem there is incoherent trade policies and practices in the conduct of domestic, bilateral, and regional and international trade. We need to improve on that. Moving away from commercialization, law to customary law is a way of looking at things, how we can actually maximize efficiency and so forth. And as well, competitiveness is a challenge on the international market, due to high costs of production. This is the problem, within Zimbabwe. I think we equate our currency to prevailing rates of other mature economies. This is something that is failing us, whereby now you've got parallel markets, and then you've got the issue of black markets, taking control of the economy, and the idea of the realization of investment through that way is lost. These are some of the things that we need to look at as a country to see, be true to ourselves. Look at, okay, we've got to go through a shock, through those economic stabilization phases that I've spoken about. That is going to be implemented, and then all these key factors of trade and how we're going to operate can be looked into, but in a way that we've reached our homeostatic balance in the way that we're operating our economy, because unstable commodity prices on the international market for mineral commodities and agricultural produce such as tobacco and cotton is not helping the country as we speak right now. So with that, we really need to look at that and see how we can maximize our policy direction in that respect. I can carry.
Okay.
You can tell me to.
Sorry, President. I think, unfortunately, I have to bring this to an end, like at 50 minutes, so that we keep it quite tight. So we'll describe the rest of the policies in detail as we go. But I think everyone has gotten the direction.
Yeah.
I think the most important takeaway for me is that you are going to be innovation-led and investment-led. And also, you've gone through all the sectors and all the things that you're going to do. So what I want to do now is to give you at least 5 questions.
Yeah.
But these must be yes and no answers or 1-minute answers.
Okay.
So that we can focus the discussion and everyone can understand.
Yeah.
We're also going to post your document. I've arranged with your people to provide me with the PDF soon. Then when it's available, we're going to post it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you 5 questions.
Yeah.
And then I want us to wrap up very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going to give you a multiple choice to make it easy.
Okay.
Unemployment, cash shortages, inflation, low FDI, low production.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is the biggest problem in Zimbabwe?
All of them are, but FDI would be your biggest problem there. Foreign direct investment.
Okay, so if we increase FDI, is that going to help us with productivity, inflation, cash shortages, unemployment?
Very much so, because if the FDI, I think you're looking at international investors, that are out there, huge conglomerates, that it can actually put in and maximize. As you know, we're a very small economy, so I think we're still reliant. We cannot rely on our 2 feet, but we've got to rely, I think, on it can be investment, from our local investors, but then as well, I think the high impact, I think, for us to see a positive outcome of our economy would be through foreign direct investment.
Okay, and I think you've addressed the issue of FDI,
yep.
How you can improve FDI. However, I want to ask another leading question.
Yep.
Why do we have low FDI in Zimbabwe? And this is a 1-minute answer, so please.
I've mentioned already. I think if investors lack trust, within with the government, you've got a problem there. They don't want to come in and invest. So you do have them, moving away from such countries, where they feel that they're going to face, expropriation, whereby their assets, can be taken by a government without them knowing. They can just wake up tomorrow and just be told you don't own. I think the radical 2000 radical land reform, I think, is an example that I can give you, whereby quite a lot of investors, hence that we're an agriculturally based economy, so that had a huge impact on our economy, because quite a lot of farmers, had to flee the country because of a radical way of or the wrong approach of actually acquiring land.
Okay, I think we're happy. This question is finished. Let's go to the next question.
Yep.
What changes will you make at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe if you become president?
I say, goodness, quite a lot. I would restructure the RBZ itself, and what else can I do? Return it to its core function of stabilizing prices. As well, revise the RBZ Act. I will do that, and grant autonomy to the central bank, recapitalize commercial banks, as well, restore liquidity by reducing statutory reserve requirements and restructuring the RBZ discount window. This is something that I'll be looking at heavily. Improve the regulatory environment. For example, I can say review the RBZ Act of 2004 and create a monetary policy committee. The one that you have right now, I think, is there, but then it does not speak or have a voice, as such. So when I'm saying, I'm creating a monetary policy committee, there is one that is there already, but then this one will be given autonomy so that they can actually speak to exactly, what is happening without any statutory instrument, imposed, upon them. With that, I'm just talking about, moving away from a conflation of fiscal policy and, monetary policy, which is a problem in Zimbabwe. I think you've got to know, where the other one stops and where the other one, takes on. There is, sometimes, whereby they've got to diverge, but then it's knowing when they converge and diverge. I've always, said this. And as well, I'll facilitate financial inclusiveness through easing barriers, to the operations of microfinance institutions. So that's what I will do with RBZ.
Okay, would you keep the current RBZ governor and the deputies?
Well, I will have to, I think with any new government, that comes into play, you're allowed to reshuffle. So, if you're allowed, to reshuffle, so that means I can look at, I think, people's background history. So if it's not working at this particular point in time, it could be an individual who's not operating at full optimum use. But as we know, I think they cannot do anything as long as, all these impediments, are put in front of them. There is no autonomy of the RBZ, itself. So with that, you've got quite a lot of, statutes, that are imposed, on RBZ, which is not working at the moment. So I cannot blame people individually. The government has got to put transparency policies in place, whereby they don't have a lot of control over the RBZ. It has got to, control demand and supply, by itself. So with that, I'll look at, if I need to reshuffle, I'll look into that and see, who stays, and who goes.
Okay. What changes would you make at the Minister of Finance?
With the Minister of Finance, I think I will change the hierarchical structure, of that one. What you find is there is a lack of synchrony in the way information is passed. I think we did see that with the issue around the condonation, bill, whereby I don't think the top office was actually, given information on time, or even for them seeking information, on time. So we looked at, how the structure of the Minister of Finance, should look like. So there are some things that we're going to have to remove, because you do have, some sort of, ghost workers, within that are not necessarily, needed. So as a matter of accountability and transparency, I would have to look at re-looking at the hierarchical structure and see, what is actually necessary and what really needs to go.
Okay, who would you appoint as the Minister of Finance?
As Minister of Finance, we do have, one of our own, that we're working alongside with. So obviously, I would appoint somebody, quite known to me, or somebody that I feel that you can have a dual aspect, of it, whereby the way I'm going to structure it will actually give a two-way, process, whereby you've got quite a lot of, economic ambience around that particular area for me to see, who I can give that position to.
Okay. Minister Mthuli Ncube.
Yeah.
He's a very educated person.
Yeah.
Former banker, former employee at the World Bank, IFC. I think all these institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that he has not been able to turn around the situation ever since he came to become minister in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I think you've got so many issues there, pressing issues. I don't think it should be an issue of sanctions, because I think we're allowed to trade because the sanctions are targeted sanctions. And with that, I'm saying, sanctions should stay there. I'm one of the people who are actually advocating to say, sanctions should go by, the re-engagement, policies that I've been talking about, ever since, we introduced FORUS Party. You've got quite a lot of issues there, whereby I think you've got quite limiting factors. As long as you've got statutes being imposed on the monetary policy, you've got a problem there. Because now you're lacking flexibility in the way that the direction of policy should go. So I think that is one of the main factors. If I'm to look at it there, that is where the problem is. There should be a separation of these policies, the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. That doesn't seem to happen, at this very point in time. And as well, I think the separation of duties is an issue, I think, in Zimbabwe. Like I've said, I think nothing has to be answered, by the top office, by the executive, pretty much all the time. So if you reverse everything so that it can be answered, or a feedback can be given from the president, himself, then it becomes a problem there. You've got to allow some sort of flexibility and allow such institutes, as long as if you manage and you've got the right values, like I've said, accountability value, and then the transparency value, I don't think you've got a problem in you actually relinquishing your powers to allow those ministries, to operate, by themselves. Obviously, there is always feedback that is given to the executive. So with that, I think it's just relinquishing powers, from the president's office, and just allow, what's necessary for the executive to hear and what's necessary for that particular department to just carry on as is. There is lack of that at this particular point in time. Separation of duties.
Okay. Can you unpack that point? How is the office of the president interfering at the Minister of Finance? Because I hear
I've just
saying
explained I've just explained the conflation of the monetary policy and the fiscal policy does not work. Yeah, anything that is actually has got to be like the issue that we have, the problem that we have with the RBZ as we speak right now is lacking its autonomy. Yeah, because of fiscal imposition by the government. Yeah, so when you've got such a scenario, it does not allow flexibility, for people to be decision orientated by themselves without seeking each and every step, from the higher governance to say, can we take this direction? Can we take, so with that, as you can imagine, a country so huge, you're actually saying, when I do my HR, human resources of employing people, we're just talking about reshuffling and people there. These are the things that you look at to say, is this person competent enough to be left alone to manage their own thing to do? This is something that I think that the government really needs to do.
Okay, I think you're being diplomatic, but let's go to the next question. You're being diplomatic because I said specifically, how is the president's office interfering? And I think the answer is not yet there.
No. It's quite clear. It's very clear to you. The RBZ is not working properly at this particular point in time because it's lacking autonomy. So I've just explained.
What about the Minister of Finance? What about the Minister of Finance? Because he is the boss. Why is Minister Ncube failing to solve the cash shortage in Zimbabwe since he came?
Like I've said, it's the hierarchy that you find yourself in. Running a country is like running a business. So I can come in and run in a business, but then the way I operate is completely different to how somebody else operates. So you can have there whereby one allows flexibility, the other perhaps does not allow that level of flexibility. So there you can actually have a restriction in the way that we can actually maximize production.
Okay, let's say you were president.
Yep.
There has been no cash in Zimbabwean ATMs for over 10 years.
Yeah.
What would you do to bring cash normalcy to the currency? And specifically, I'm talking about cash. I want people to put cash in their wallets. Since Gono was there, no one has been able to have a solid $10 note in their pocket.
Yeah.
What would you do? I have got $2 now.
Yeah.
Which I withdrew in Zimbabwe 2 years ago, which is worth nothing.
Yeah. How
would you solve this problem?
I think if you look at our currency, there is the problem, isn't it? We've got a huge inflation, to the point where I think our RTGS, is not worth anything. Hence, I said I think the issue of using the gold coins with a weak currency is something that becomes very difficult for operation to be fully functioning. What you've got there is some of the things that I think were looked into already, because the Zimbabwean problem, the economic problem, has been running, I think, since the early 80s. Yeah. So what you have there, I think, is the dollarization that was introduced as a way of trying to bring in, money into the country. So with that, this is something that I'll carry on doing so that we can have a strong currency working alongside our weak currency, and then incrementally see, how we can push out the US dollar to a certain point. Because as long as we carry on using the US dollar, that means it's weakening our currency. So we've got to find ways, of moving away from that. Hence, I've said, I think all these different tools that I've been explaining on the different ways of how we can come out, of this hole. So by so doing, this is the only way, that you can say that you can have a good circulation of our RTGS and, maximizing its strength. That's what we need to do first. We need to move away from the dollarization, which is, I think, something that's what happened, isn't it? We went on to do dollarization by using the, and then we chose the US dollar, as the reserve currency. So with that, that helped. I think at that particular time we introduced that you could see that people, you and I, could go and withdraw cash, from any cash point, even kunanama chipisa, you could actually just go and put in your card there, and you could withdraw the US dollar, from there. But then, as much as it was, whatever, but then we had, I think, quite a flock of different people from different countries, having to flock into Zimbabwe and actually pulling all that, money out of the country. So that was a problem. So that's the problem that you find as well, that, if you've got, another currency that is quite strong, you do have neighboring countries, coming into the country and pulling out, all those, that currency, out of the country, then which creates, a problem, for you. But what I've said is that, maintain the dualistic approach of using the strong currency of the US dollar and the RTGS working alongside each other, but incrementally moving away from using the US dollar as we put in the stabilization program. So with doing the stabilization program and actually facing the shock that we need to face as a country, and actually understand where we are, the date that we have, and the debt restructuring that we need to put in place, like I've said, working alongside the IMF, and so forth, and the all different banks that are out there, to see how we can come up with a proper pathway that is actually favorable for Zimbabwe's economy to maintain or sustain its economy.
Okay. So, President, what I would do, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
What I would do is I'll have two types of ATMs.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have an RTGS ATM.
Yeah.
I'll have a Zimbabwe dollar ATM. I'll have a US dollar ATM. And I'll have a Rand ATM. What would be wrong with that? And then those ones who want to withdraw rands can withdraw rands. Those who want to withdraw dollars can withdraw dollars. Why is the government not allowing that? Why would your government not do that?
Our government will do that because I think if you look at strong economies, that's what they do. If I'm to walk in with strong economies, you can actually punch in to say, what sort of currency you want, then that currency can come out of an ATM. Those are quite strong economies that they can do that. So in the long run, that's something that we want to see in Zimbabwe. But then when you have such a scenario, it's whereby your currency is strongly equating to those currencies. So it can run alongside those currencies. So its strength is equating to those currencies. So then that makes life easy for that to happen. So as long as you bring in new currencies and your currency is weak, that means that you're promoting the use of all those other currencies. As as long as that promotion is there of other currencies, those currencies become stronger than your currency. I hope you're understanding that bit that I'm explaining there, to see where we are in Zimbabwe, why it can't work now. It can work if our currency is strong and it's running alongside other strong currencies. Then you haven't got a problem with that, because whichever way you want to look at it, I think the market rates are all prevailing at the same, or roughly more or less the same rate. So you find that people can choose to use the RTGS because it's strongly its strength is equating to the rand, or it's equating more or less, its strength is not equating as such, but it's running alongside, as a strong currency as compared, to other currencies. Then you can introduce that.
Okay. Unfortunately, my power is just gone. So I'm now on backup power. So we have to wrap this up.
That's all right.
I have two more questions. So let's start with the easy one. Do you have the $20,000 that has been demanded by ZEC to contest as a presidential candidate?
Oh, that one. I think that one is unbeknown to everybody. I think it's coming seemingly as a shock even to opposition party, of which I thought this is something that they would have deliberated in parliament for us to actually know what is actually happening. Our constitution does not say that at this particular point in time. Like I've said, if you were to bring in any statutory instrument, it has got to go through different stages, isn't it? You're looking at because that's a statutory instrument that they've introduced there. So with that, you do have a non-affirmative, procedure that is actually there or drafted and known by everybody, within parliament and within opposition, and the whole of the country would actually know about it. So by the time that it's introduced, you do have perhaps all necessary joint committees of that statutory instruments, having known to say that they would have looked into this, looked into depth, and pick it and unpick it, to scrutinize it, whichever way you can say it, to ensure that it is legal for it to be endorsed as a statutory instrument. It doesn't seem like this has happened in Zimbabwe. So whether to talk about an imposition of 20,000 as a US dollar is not something that we need to talk about at this particular point in time. We need to talk about, our constitution, is everything is all the necessary steps been followed? Is this something that, in terms of, a statutory instrument, how it's enacted for it to be, say that it's now being announced, has that been followed? Because nobody seems to know that if that has been the procedure that has been followed. So the other thing is our constitution, has that been followed, as well? So these are all these things that you need to say that, we can't just come up, and just wake up, the next day and say, we have decided that this is what we are going to change. We need to understand, okay, what is the reason that people have got to pay that particular money? Is it legal for that to be imposed, on people? Is it happening in other countries? And if so, why? And, so when we look at it in things like that, and how actually statutory instruments are imposed, then we've got a better understanding of how this has come to be in play. But then seemingly everybody is still trying to understand, what is actually happening around these fees that have been imposed currently.
Okay, but let's say it's legal. Would you pay 20,000 to contest the election in Zimbabwe?
I wouldn't know if it's legal or illegal, but it's something that a constitution, I think has to go along with. It's not something that I've heard, from other countries. I don't know if there are other countries, that I've got to pay, before, I've got to pay my way into running. I've got to pay some sort of, it's not a ransom as such, but I've got to pay some sort of money for me to stand to be a president. It just doesn't seem right, because this is a public, platform, whereby the people have got to voice, who they want to be. I don't have to pay for people to vote for me to be in office, as such. So we just need to understand, if that money is to be paid, where is that money going? And why is it that, it has just been introduced, just now? Because when you look at such statutes, you need an amount of time that is allowed, for people to, chew the card or regurgitate and actually see that, okay, this is something that works, or this is something that's happening in other countries, and this is something that Zimbabwe is willing to take at this particular point in time. So with that, I cannot even discuss about the payment of it, because at the very first time, I need to look at the problem. Okay, was this statutory instrument, procedure done properly? And is this part of the constitution, before I go anywhere else?
Okay, in Canada, they are paying $300,000, according to someone who told me yesterday, for a candidate. I'm pressing you on this because...
No, go on.
I would want to know whether you have the commitment to the presidential election, because what happened is in the last election, I had with me over 20 presidential candidates that I dealt with directly.
Yep.
And out of all those, most of them even failed to pay the $1,000.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the 20. I'm talking about that 1,000 from back then. They stopped contesting because they didn't want to put in the 1,000.
Yeah.
So your policies are good, and I believe that you can do very well in this election. But would you commit your $20,000? Would you put what Senator Kalipani Pugen said yesterday, skin in the game? Would you do that?
If it's something that is a statutory instrument that is accepted by all Zimbabweans, and it becomes, habitual, and we're all understanding it, then I think that would be something that that is there for the country. And if I'm choosing to say I've got to be a president, And if that's one of the processes that I've got to follow, and that will be the process that I will follow.
Okay. Difficult question, I know, but Tapio Tsepo here just said in South Africa, a presidential candidate pays 1 million rands. So if you divide 1 million by 15, that's about $75,000 in South Africa. So I guess ZEC is way within the SADC guidelines in terms of the amount. And I know it's a bitter pill to swallow, especially for the candidates.
No, yeah. What I will say there is, I don't think we're arguing as to whether this should be paid or not. But what you have there is, I think from quite a lot of people, it came as a surprise. It's not something, so that's where I'm saying that, what is it that it's not about paying money. Like I've said, if it's happening in other countries, why is it happening and how much? I've just mentioned that, yeah? So I'm not running away from that, yeah? So, but what I'm just saying is that the statutory instrument in how it was enacted, it seemingly was sort of like a secretive. It's not something that everybody was quite aware of, and if it was, we would have wanted public information about it so that people are prepared in taking the information and like I've said, digest it and say, okay, this is what needs to be followed. Is this something that we've got in our constitution? Is it something that's got to be added on right now? Is this something? So it's all these things, but my point is not to move away from the payment. I've said, if other countries are doing it, why is it that they're doing it, and so forth? Whether they're paying different amounts, it depends on the country, and how rich the country is can be a main factor and whatever. So we've got to use our own prevailing rates, yeah. So with that, I'm not saying this shouldn't be, but I'm just saying it's just the procedure that it's done. It's going to be something that is open discussion, for the whole country, to know, because this is something that is a statutory instrument. So we just need to understand it, better. How it came up to be, and why is it that it came up to be 20,000? What is the reason for that, and so forth. That's where my point is.
Okay, I think this is a very topical issue. A lot of people are not happy, especially those who are used to contesting with small amounts. Yeah. And for councillors in the villages, they will struggle. Most of them are going to struggle. Yeah. And I'm sure the ballot paper is going to be very, very small. It won't be that big ballot paper that we had previously.
Yeah.
And I think let's wrap this up. And the next week, I want to put you on the spot. No,
if we can just, center, because if you're looking at, I think it's not something that you say, okay. What I want to say is that you find that with Zimbabwe, the economic life in Zimbabwe, finding employment, even for some of the councillors, even some of the MPs and so forth, and even the way the political parties, are running in Zimbabwe. There is no money in Zimbabwe. There's no employment. There isn't, anything like that. So you're looking at the type of people, who are involved in politics, in Zimbabwe. Quite a lot of people don't have, money, and quite a lot of people don't have, I don't know, organizations there that constitutionally allowed, to fund, political parties. So with that, it becomes very difficult, I think, for people to accept, such things. And as well, it should be something that, the public should have been taken through so that they can actually, absorb the information, better. Because if you look at it, if you calculate, I think on the amounts there, I think you're looking at the MPs, I think it's 1,000, isn't it? $1,000 per each MP?
Yes, it's 1,000.
Yeah.
And for senators, it's between 100 and 400.
So if you calculate it, you're looking at 210 MPs that you require. So you calculate Zimbabwe, 210 times 1,000, how much would that give you? That's 210.
Is that not when we should have a coalition then? Instead of having 10 candidates, should not have a coalition of one candidate?
Yeah, but that's secondary. Yeah, I'm just looking at it that we've got, even in some other countries. I'll give UK, for example. I think they've got roughly quite a lot of political parties, nearly probably to 100. So that's there. Yeah, in other countries as well. But you find that in Zimbabwe, with the way our economy is, we do not have money, and political parties do not have money as we speak, right now. now. So these are some of the things, that people, I think, will be angry towards, not that, perhaps the imposition of the amount, but then the way that they need to bring about this money can be very, very difficult. Then they feel that, they've been outcasted, indirectly, by this announcement, of such an instrument. So these are some of the things, I think that the government just needs to allow people to vent and express, themselves in the way that this has been carried out. It should have been an open discussion, and then understanding as well, where the money goes, if they've paid the money. Because if you look at 210,000 for MPs, you need 1,950. Is it for your councillors? That's roughly another 192, thousand. So roughly you're looking at 500,000, for you to contest. Yeah. So it becomes very difficult if you don't even have 1,000 to actually run a constituency or even find money, then let alone talk about, 500,000 to contest. So it's just that, I think it's just understanding, I think different political parties, are coming from with the economic situation in Zimbabwe. I thought I needed to say that.
Okay. So as I was saying, I've heard that, and I think we'll have to discuss this as we go.
Yeah.
Zach is going to have their hands full with this one.
Yeah.
Next week, I want us to go into a very difficult topic. For me, I know you'll be able to handle this. I want us to go into military, security, and let's say state security for Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
You are going to be the president, commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
I want us to look at that. How are you going to tackle Zimbabwe military under your government?
Yeah.
Are you up to it?
Yeah, we can discuss, the issues, pertaining to Zimbabwe, isn't it? So anything that we can discuss, I think it's much more, like I've always said, it's got to be constructive in the way that we need to forge the country forward. So there might be some positives that are there, and there might be some shortfalls, that are there. So we look at both sides and see, what is the right outcome, out of the positives and negatives for state security, and see, how we can all forge together as Zimbabweans, because I'm looking at us all as Zimbabweans, and looking after our country security-wise, and see, how best, we can propel the country forward.
Okay, thank you very much, President Irene Manyara Mienziwa, or you said I must say Madam Mienziwa.
Yes, yeah, if it works, yeah, go with that.
I really enjoy talking to you, and many people don't know something about economics.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Like, many people don't get, when you're talking, a lot of people don't understand you.
Yeah.
Because they don't know economics, but I do understand you, and you did very, very well. And I think...
Well, I was trying to give examples there, and actually just give examples and linking it to the policy, and so that people can understand it better.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again next week.
Thank you for having me.
Uyo uko kuno aho pano mamuona kere nai